so that we can get that going and I won't forget. So please just be aware that I am now recording. So if your camera is on at any time, we may see you. And if you speak up or you use the chat, we will be able to see that on the recordings as well. So here's what I would like to do. I want to touch bases on where we are. Thank you for indulging me in having our week off last week. You guys, we had some really good scores on the midterm, and I was sort of reshuffling a little bit of how I want to do the rest of the semester. I want to put more emphasis on the project. So I did a lot of work on that this last week. I'm going to put a little less emphasis on the lectures and the final reading, which is, I think, basically chapters 9 through 15. We will still cover those, but I'm going to put a little bit less emphasis on that. I want to put more emphasis on the project. So tonight, the two big things that we're going to accomplish, number one, we're going to go over the midterm and the questions on the midterm. Know that things that are on the midterm will, some of those will likely show up again on the final because the final will be cumulative. So I want to make sure that we go over those. And then we're going to go over the project. And along with the project, I have a homework assignment, and the homework assignment will be something that I think will help you with the project. In fact, I'm going to try my best to have the homework assignments all dovetail into the project. So that's what we're going to do. I will be surprised if we're here more than an hour. I know famous last words, Brian, you've said that before, that we weren't going to be here a long time, and we have stayed longer. So I'm trying to make up for a little bit of that. So really, the two big things are the midterm and the project that we're going to go over. Quick note about grades. I think I've got Moodle fixed again. So I was posting a whole bunch of grades earlier this week. The midterm grades are up there. Homework assignments are up there. I have one more homework assignment to finish posting up there. I'll probably do that right after class. And then I have your papers that I need to post there. I had a couple late papers come in that I haven't graded, so I will post all of those together. But I apologize for the delays on that. Just really hating Moodle these days. Not loving that. In teaching at 3 schools, Moodle and the e-learning at University of Texas are duking it out to be my less enjoyable parts of teaching, of having to deal with the tech support on those. But I think I got it squared away. So I should have that stuff up there now. Let's go into the midterm. I want to go over the midterm. Now, this is one of those things where it's not really easy for you to go over what I'm going over with, because the way the midterm is set up on Moodle, not everybody's, but what comes up on my terminal as question 1 may not be question 1 on yours. It randomizes where the questions are. So some of you will have questions that are in the same order and some of you won't. So what I'm going to do is I'm just very quickly going to go through all the questions and give quick versions of those answers. If you have individual questions along the way, you can ask, or you can ask me afterwards, or you can send me an email on that. A number of you already have. I screwed up on one question that I gave everybody credit for. How I did it, I'm not sure. If you guys knew what was involved in programming these tests, you'd probably have a little bit of sympathy. It's not easy. It takes a long time. It's very, very mechanical. Opening up a document, opening up a file, opening up a question style, selecting a question style, and then the language that they use is not ordinary a language. For example, on the one that I screwed up, it was the question that was about owned media, and how I put down slogan was the right answer. That was just flat out wrong, and a number of you caught me on that. And I did go ahead and fix everybody's, whether you got it right or not. Everybody got credit on that one. But what it turns out it does when you have a multiple choice, you have to allocate a percentage. You don't answer which one is right or wrong when you're the teacher writing the test. You allocate a percentage. So if it's wrong, you allocate 0%. And if it's right, you allocate 100%. And if you want a couple questions to be part right, you can allocate 50% on those. And I think it's the dumbest thing in the world, but I guess there are some teachers that would like that. Somehow I just gave a complete wrong answer on that. A few of you did have a couple questions based upon what we spoke about in class. Just know that if you presented good findings and you identified some key things, I did upgrade a few people's tests based upon their sending me emails immediately following the test. But for the most part, there were very good results. I think we had 9 people that were in A's, and we had the remaining 5 people in the class were strung out somewhere between B's and F's. But fortunately, we had 2 people in the class that got 100%, which always tells me that the test was doable, and it was something that you guys could accomplish from what we have done in class and what we've done in the readings. So not necessarily in the order that you took these. 4 steps of brand building as described in the text and discussed in class. This was kind of the textbook's theoretical way of brand building. Number 1, they said establish and figure out the brand identity. Number 2, establish a tone and the meaning of the brand. Number 3, it said elicit proper customer responses. What they were really saying is you need to find a way that you, with your branding and the customer, agree, and then use those brand responses and your efforts to build brand resonance. So it was kind of technical the way that we talked about that, but that was directly out of the book, and it was directly out of our PowerPoint on that. The question, what does IMC stand for? Integrated Marketing Communications. I think everybody got that right. Which of the following was not considered a brand amplifier? This is one that a few people got wrong. But the way the text identified it is a lot of our marketing and promotional activities begin with things like advertising. We are paying to put a message out there. And then the concept of the brand amplifier is what is something else out there, not necessarily that we trigger or start, though possibly we trigger or start it, that amplifies our brand message. And so correctly on that, things like public relations, when somebody does a story about our brand, that amplifies the message. When word of mouth talks about our brand, we don't necessarily create that word of mouth, but that word of mouth is a brand amplifier. Publicity is a brand amplifier. So just know that we can plan for some marketing communications and some we are hoping happens, and we can prompt it and we can prime the pump for it, but we can't necessarily make people do word of mouth. We can do a lot of things to try and help that, but we can't necessarily make them do that. Those are brand amplifiers. Which type of marketing or promotion below is owned media? This is the one I mentioned before. For some reason, it came up that company slogan was the correct answer. It is not the correct answer. What we were looking for on that was company website. The vast majority of you had that right, but it was marked wrong. Just know I went in and overridden. I'm not quite sure what the right words. It's been a very long day for me. I overwrote the grade and gave you the full credit. Whether you got it right or not, everybody got that one right now. Let's see. Describing the one-to-many and the many-to-many channels and how it pertains to marketing and branding today. So, sorry about that. Hang on. Could you guys just hear my phone ringing or no? Yeah. So for some reason, somehow my daughter helped put my phone through my computer. I don't know how to get it off of there. So when a phone call comes in, it comes into my computer, and I realize now it comes through on my Zoom. So I apologize for that. The mistake that a few of you made on this, it tells me that maybe you didn't hear the lecture, or you didn't see the lecture, or you didn't read about this in the textbook. Some of you talked about channels in terms of distribution channels. That was not the channels we were talking about. We were talking about communications channels. And we actually had a few charts that I used in the PowerPoint on that. One-to-many was what we referred to in sort of the old school of broadcasting, where we broadcast out a single message to many, many people. And then we also had where we had many to many, and we had many to many in terms of communications, meaning somebody may push out a message and you might push that out to one person or to many people. And each of those people in turn can talk and speak to other people. And the reason this is important in our discussions is when you create a brand, the former way of creating a brand was we tried to tell people about the brand. We broadcast that in a one-to-many communications. And when we were talking about that during the lecture and with the PowerPoint, one of the things that we know now through things like social media, through things like comments on Amazon, we can push messages out, but those many people actually create their own brand messages about our brand. And again, we don't have control over all of those many other discussions, but it's something we have to be very aware of. So when we're creating promotional plans for a brand, we create plans, some of which we control, and some of which we're going to help guide and move along, but we don't really have a lot of control of. That's really what that was about. So those of you that went into distribution channels and distributing through, direct marketing and things like that, that really wasn't the topic of what we were talking about. So this again was straight out of the textbook and straight out of the PowerPoint on that. What did CBBE stand for? I think everybody got that. Customer-based brand equity. That's really a cornerstone concept of the textbook. If you just want to drop the customer-based brand equity, that's the thing that we're talking about. We're trying to build brand equity. We're trying to build up this goodwill of people knowing our brand, recalling our brand, retaining the ideas of our brand, feeling good about our brand, developing this brand resonance where it matters to them. And ultimately they buy our products or our services, the products and services of our brand, and therefore creating value to us and actually bringing us revenue by buying the product. So that's really what brand equity is all about. Brand resonance, which includes brand loyalty, is at the top of the brand resonance period. Yes, it is. In the textbook, there was a period. In fact, they have a couple different images of the pyramid, and brand resonance is kind of at the top of it. It's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get our brand to resonate with people, get them to hear it, to see it, to think about it, to understand it. That's resonance. Next question. Which of the following is not one of the creative messaging strategies discussed in class? Well, informational, transformational, and motivational were the three, and cause and effect was the one that was not. So cause and effect was the not, therefore the correct answer on that. This is one that people, that we had some errors on. I want to clear this one up. Brand recall is a consumer's ability to confirm a prior exposure to a brand. No. Brand recall is when somebody can actually bring up the name of a brand or something about the brand simply by remembering it. So they're not prompted by anything else. They're not prompted by an exposure. And so brand recall is when, sorry, let me just say the question again. Brand recall is a consumer's ability to confirm a prior exposure to a brand. Brand recall is when people remember the brand without a prompting, and an unaided recall is what we said in class on that. So next question. In class, we discussed the brand value chain in a simplified way. Remember, there was a very complex way in the textbook, and then I created this little simple way of looking at it. I didn't want you to have to memorize the whole big giant chart. I thought it was very complex. I mentioned in class I was going to give you sort of that refined way, and that refined way had 4 elements in it. It talked about doing marketing activity. That was the very first one. It was over on the left side of that chart. And then we sort of build something into the customer mindset. And then we begin to see market performance where hopefully people are finding our brand and buying our brand. And then that results in the 4th part of the value chain, which is by them buying our products or services, they're actually giving us shareholder value. We're actually making money on it. And so that's the brand value chain. POD, I think everybody got this right. A point of difference. What makes your product different from somebody else's? It's a point of differentiation. If you said point of difference or point of differentiation, either one of those got it right. And it's the things that make you stand out from competitors. POP is point of parity. And for those of you that said parody, P-A-R-O-D-Y, that's making fun of something. I actually gave you credit because it may have simply been the way I was pronouncing it. I didn't want to penalize you for that. So if you said point of parody, technically the word isn't right, but I know what you meant on that one, and I know you meant it in good intent. And there were a few of you that did that, but just know what it really is P-A-R-I-T-Y, parity. As opposed to parody, which is when we make fun of somebody. Saturday Night Live does parody. According to the American Marketing Association, a brand is a name, a term, a sign, a symbol, a design intended to identify one seller's goods and services as distinct from those of others. That's a true statement. Which of the following is not an example of reason to believe? Well, I gave a couple examples that I think I actually gave in class. Clinically tested to reduce dry skin. 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Trident. 95% customer satisfaction after 1 year. Those are all reasons to believe. Those are things that we actually put into advertising to help us differentiate, get people to believe our brand message. The one that I put in there that was not an example was Nike's tagline of "Just Do It." That's not really a reason to believe. That's sort of their battle cry, if you will. Concentrating marketing efforts on the end consumer can be described as a push strategy. No, that's false. That would be a pull strategy. A push strategy is when we create a product or service and we sell it to wholesalers, distributors, and retailers, and we get them to push it out to the marketplace. We fuel the stores. We put product on the shelves in an effort to get people out. If we were to go to Ralph's or Vaughn's as a manufacturer, let's say it's Super Bowl time and we're Budweiser or Pepsi, and we go in and we say, we'll pay you $150 if we can set up at the end of an aisle a big stand full of 12 packs of Pepsi. And they say, yes, you can. We're pushing the product in the store to try and push it to the consumers. A pull strategy, the opposite, is when we advertise to the end user, to the consumer, and we require that they sort of go to the store to get it. So in other words, we need to try and get them to pull the product through the pipeline. The other way is we're trying to push the product through the pipeline to the consumer. When distribution is critical and you have to have distribution partners, you generally create a push strategy. You have to make deals with people to try and get your product out there. For example, my bicycle client only sells bicycles through what we call independent bicycle dealers. That's the bike shop that's on the street corner. My client does not sell through Costco, not through Walmart, not through Target. If we were to sell through Target, we might be saying that doing big ads on television and just getting people to go, oh, I want that bike, and they go to Walmart or Target and say, do you have that bike? Instead, what we have to do is we do trade advertising to those independent bike dealers, saying what a good deal and how much money they'll make when they sell our bicycles. And that's a difference between a push strategy and a pull strategy. Push is pushing through the channel. Pull is going to the end consumer and trying to get them to pull it through the channel. Branding is important in marketing to consumers, but it is not critical in business-to-business marketing. That's false. Branding is equal in both. Branding is very important. It's very important when you're selling to the trade. It's very important when you are selling to consumers. So a few of you, I think, just got a little bit mixed up on that. Consumers choosing to follow a brand like on Facebook. That's an example of, that was an example of high brand engagement. In the textbook, it speaks of high brand engagement when people are actually involved in your brand. You can't force somebody to follow you on Facebook. They need to want to do it. And if they want to follow your brand, it means they're engaged with you and they actually did something. They acted upon it. You know, low brand engagement, there's really not much when we talk about that. Um, uh, I actually had as a wrong answer low brand equity. That actually had nothing to do with it. Choosing a brand and following it on Facebook, that really doesn't have anything to do with brand awareness. Yes, they had to have been aware of that before, but that's not really tied into it. It doesn't really tie into brand knowledge. So high brand engagement, and that's a goal of us in today's branding. It was not as much 50 years ago. Having people know about the brand was very important, but there were very few ways to engage with a brand like there are now. We can follow on Facebook, we can watch YouTube videos, we can read their blog. There's many, many more ways we can be engaged in a high brand engagement with brands that we like. A brand can build brand equity by linking itself to an appropriate secondary based brand association. Which of the following is not an example of a secondary brand association you would link to? Well, you can link to other brands, you can link to companies, you can link to a spokesperson, but you can't link to the future. So the future was not something that you could link your brand to. Therefore, that was the answer to the question. Growing brand equity relies on the quality of the marketing programs used. To judge the quality of the marketing programs that we discussed, the acronym DRIVE was used. What do those letters stand for? Straight out of the book, straight out of the lecture, straight out of the PowerPoint. DRIVE is distinctiveness, relevance, integrated, value, and excellence. And again, a few of you, I'm pretty sure, didn't remember that or didn't see it, and unfortunately probably did an internet search because you came up with something that was part of the acronym of DRIVE, but that had nothing to do with judging the quality of marketing programs. So this is what the answer needed to be. DRIVE equals distinctiveness, relevance, integrated, value, and excellence. When beginning to build brand equity, one of a brand's first steps is to build brand awareness. Yes, yeah, part of what we discussed for a couple weeks there is the first step in pushing a brand out there is to gain awareness. We cannot convince somebody that our brand is best until they know that our brand exists. So it's a fundamental part of the strategy that we can't convince people to buy our product until they know our product exists. So I always say first ad campaigns really need to be focused on developing brand awareness, getting people to know our brand exists. Once they know it exists, then we can try to begin convincing them to buy our product or why our product is better. But early on, our goal really needs to be brand awareness. Products and services can be branded, but people cannot be brands. That's really not true. We talked about in class how certain people could be a brand, how Cardi B could be a brand, how LeBron James can be a brand. Almost anything nowadays can be branded. A service can be branded, products can be branded, people can be branded, teams can be branded, bands can be branded. Almost anything can be branded. It's really a fundamental principle of branding now. This idea of creating an entity that has values, that has imagery that are associated with it, that help people remember it, and that helps add value to the people that purchase or consume those brands or follow those brands. And hopefully it adds value and equity to the owners of those brands. 6 things discussed in class that are considered brand elements. Well, typically that's going to be brand names, URLs, logos, symbols, characters, spokespeople, slogans, colors, There's actually a bunch of other things. Those are straight out of the textbook. There were actually 10 in there. I asked for 6. Most of you got that right. 7 pillars of IMC as discussed by the instructor. So we had advertising, public relations, non-advertising promotion, personal selling, events and experiential marketing, social media, and everything else. So when you are creating an integrated marketing campaign, you are going to create a campaign that is going to make use of some or all of these elements. When we're talking about advertising, that's paid media, paid advertising. You control the message. Public relations, you pay a PR firm to do the work, but you don't pay for the placement. You also don't get to control the message. You give your product to an influencer, to a reporter, to a television station, a radio station, and they do a story on it. They get to say what they want. So your PR firm tries to influence them, but they don't get to control the message. Non-advertising promotion, that's almost anything else other than paid and placed media. So when people are doing sort of a 2-for-1 offer, or they're doing a combo offer, when you get when you buy Kraft macaroni and cheese and they give you an offer for on the back of the box to buy coffee cups with Kraft's logo on it for a discount, that would be a non-advertising promotion. A lot of other things like sponsorships sometimes fall into that category. Event advertising can sometimes fall into that category. I have a client that buys sponsorships to some large events. We don't really know where our advertising is going, but it'll get placed somewhere at an event. We don't always even know what exactly the advertising will be because the event the event promoters actually print up the banners. So that would sort of fall into non-advertising promotion. Personal selling, that's what people do in stores. It's what sales reps do when you call and talk to tech support. That's personal selling. Events and experiential. So experiential can be anything from test driving a car or going to Costco when we get to go to Costco and we get to try the food that they're sampling at the end of the aisle. Events can be almost any kind of event. It could be a trade show. It could be a very large public event, a sporting event, a concert, but maybe they have a place where you can buy products or you can see products. That would be events and experiential. Social media, I'm pretty sure you all know what that is. This really didn't exist more than 20 years ago, and it's become this whole new area. If we were doing a class on internet marketing, we would be able to speak to how social media has helped create content marketing. And then the 7th category, they're all other. That's really anything else that doesn't fit into those other categories. Typically branding, packaging, things like that will usually fit into that category. So those are 7 pillars. Remember, those are not going to be in a textbook. That's just a way I've organized the thinking. And so that was something that came straight out of the class discussions. The word brand actually comes from an old Norse word that means to burn, or burning a mark, an identifier into livestock. That's true. Yeah, when we talked about, branding cattle, people didn't, when you had 10,000 head of cattle in Texas, you didn't necessarily put fences up that went hundreds of miles and hundreds of miles and hundreds of miles. You simply branded your livestock, and if they walked into your, neighbor's field, they'd return them because they knew who it belonged to because of the brand. Whereas marketing tends to deal with tasks, branding is more about images, ideas, and values, both tangible and intangible. That's true. So marketing, where people are mistaken, is that marketing is really an activity that is very specific to moving a product through channels and to get to consumers. Whereas branding is really about creating ideas and images in people's minds, getting them to like a product, to value a product. And that's really kind of a fundamental difference. A lot of people mistake marketing and branding for being the same thing. They're not. The term POP, we already went over that. Which is not considered a benefit of branding. Well, branding can increase differentiation. It can increase the credibility of a brand. it actually can reduce the risk of producing that, because the better it's branded, the more likely people will buy it. It's a less risky business venture. But a benefit of good branding is not reducing the value of the brand. In fact, it should be the opposite. The benefit should be you increase value of a brand. A brand mantra is a paragraph describing irrefutable evidence or spirit of a brand positioning. That's false, because you guys did a homework assignment on this. It's supposed to be just a couple words. And this is an exercise I suggest that people do when they're creating brands. When you guys are doing your brand project, I think you should go through the effort of creating a brand mantra. This is not a slogan. This is not trying to create the slogan. You should do that too. But the brand mantra is trying to find a few key words that really embody the spirit of a brand. It's not a paragraph. It's not a brand manifesto where you're writing pages and pages and pages about it. If you can come up with 3 words that really embody a brand, that tells me you really understand that brand. We only have a couple more to go. Changes in the customer journey is a term that can be used to describe how a customer shops differently in the digital era. Yes. So the customer journey many years ago used to be, you got a Sears catalog in the mail, and you pulled out the order form in the back and you filled it out and you put a check or a money order in an envelope with it, and that's how you bought something. And of course, we had towns and we had cities and we had stores, and then we started having things like malls. So sometimes we would, drive to a store. Sometimes we'd go to a mall, and the shopping experience, the customer journey might have been going from one store to another. But our customer journey is very different now. One of the things that we've learned in today's customer journey is a huge percentage of people, even if they don't plan on buying from Amazon, go check out products on Amazon. They go there to check prices. They go there to check availability, even if they buy it locally, even if they buy it on another site. But that's a changing customer journey for us. We can go to a lot of companies and buy directly from them. We couldn't do that before. Most companies only sold through shops before. Many sell direct now. So it's changed our customer journey. Classic definition of brand equity is a set of brand assets or liabilities that add or detract from the value assigned to a product or service. Yes, that's true. A few people had a few suggestions for me that maybe this was said differently. In a couple cases, it was a good enough argument that I overrode the marks on that. But yeah, that's the basic definition of brand equity. It's what we do to a brand that we're hoping is going to add value. But what I also said was, but if you brand poorly, you actually take away from it. And that's the classic definition of brand equity, that we're trying to build goodwill and value into it. And if we do it well, we build it. And if we don't do well, we actually become a hindrance to it or a liability to it. I think the example that I gave of being the hindrance to it was when Time Warner Cable, the brand was so bad and was such a liability that they simply changed the name of the company to Spectrum. And I told you guys, in my neighborhood, all the neighbors all of a sudden started talking about, oh, we have a new cable company, Spectrum. I'm going to switch from Time Warner. Well, you didn't have to, because Time Warner didn't exist anymore. Their brand was so bad, they changed the name of it. And guess what? People started signing up for it again. Brand management process described in the text could be described as the design and implementation of marketing programs and activities to specifically increase market share. No, that's not true. The process is, all of the rest of that is true, except it's designed to increase brand equity. Brand equity, that's that cornerstone of this class, brand equity. List 4 of the challenges discussed in class that marketing and branding faces today. There are many, many, many. Most of you got this right. Those of you that mentioned any of the ones, I was very, very forgiving of this. Some of you mentioned things that weren't even in class, but they were very good answers. I gave you credit on those as well. But they had to be things that are sort of challenging. Price pressure was one that many people said, that we've seen this pressure on prices in large part because we can compare prices so easily. I kind of chuckle, if you ever go buy carpeting or you buy mattresses, those are 2 industries where the branding of products is specifically designed to fool you. There are not that many different kinds of mattresses out there. But when you go to a mattress shop, you'll find all these different names. Well, they actually sell mattresses with different names, but are the same mattresses to other shops nearby, but they're not the same names, they're not the same brands, and they do that so you can't comparison shop. Same thing is true with carpeting. When we put carpeting in a room we were redoing, we were looking for what one store called chocolate chip. It was basically a white carpet with a bunch of brown and black speckles, which, by the way, we thought was a great idea because we had a puppy and we thought it would hide the dirt. No, it just got it dirtier. The puppy, that carpet didn't hide the dirt at all. It just got really dirty with a puppy. But we found out that exact same carpet was at different stores, but under different names. And the people at the store would say, "Oh, we don't have that. We have this one, and you're not gonna find this one for a lower price anywhere." Well, that's right. We couldn't find that other one anywhere. It was the exact same carpet, but a different name. And so that's one of the reasons that when you see people doing that, it's because of price pressure. They don't want you to comparison shop. Amazon and shopping apps make it really easy to comparison shop, which puts pressure on pricing. Also, just the fact that there's more competitors out there. That was a good answer. Global competitors. We're fighting against people from many, many different countries. Guess what? We're selling products into many countries. So as much as you could say that's a problem, it's also a benefit on the flip side. Another answer that was cited frequently, there's a lot of information out there. There's tons of information out there. There's a lot of wrong information out there. And that makes it challenging for marketing and branding. Trends are, so first of all, there are trends. Second, there are trends that change very quickly. There are trends that people jump on. There is false information that creates trends that shouldn't be out there. So there's lots and lots of different things that are causing challenges. I asked you to do 4. If you did 4, you got full credit on that. So that is a look at all the questions. Like I say, I know they're not necessarily in the order that yours was. If you were trying to follow along, it might have been a little bit difficult. But if you have individual questions, instead of taking time right now in class on your individual one, I'll stay on at the end of class if you have a question, or if you want to shoot me an email. A few of you already have, and you'll, if I didn't get back to you, you'll have seen that reflected in your grades if what you asked me was something that I should have changed or that I took into account. My best guess is that a final exam will look a lot like this. Questions that are based on the reading from the text that we talk about in class. And the one thing that will likely be different is I will probably have some kind of a question that will be like an essay. I hate to call it essay question because they're not really essay, but I might have you do something like create a brand and talk to me about the process of creating a brand that might be on the final. Remember that in my class, about 60–70% of the learning happens going up until the midterm. There's a little bit more new material after the midterm, but there's more doing, and there's the practical part of it. And that's what we're going into now. So there won't be a lot of new material. There will be some. So on the final, we will have some reviews. So your midterm is a real good study guide going forward for the final. And so with that, what I would like to do is I would like to talk about your project. And I've posted this on Moodle. I actually posted it, so this one fell into last week. So if you look at last week's date on Moodle, it's in there. The homework for this week is in this week's. And I'm just going to go over this. I'm actually going to read it in case you haven't looked at it or downloaded it, which is absolutely okay. I'm going to walk through this. Know that I will be adding a few more elements over the next couple weeks, but this is the brunt of it. The overview of the project. You are to create a brand. In very simple terms, I'm going to ask you to create a brand. Well, let's talk a little bit about what that means. This involves the creation of a product or service and developing the brand that that product or service will be sold under. You will create brand elements and a brand plan for this product or service. You will also create documents and examples of the branding on the product and some marketing communications. This will all come together in a paper with exhibits and samples in that paper. So you're going to write a paper for me about a brand you're going to create. I'm going to give you some key criteria, a few things I want you to take into account as you're doing this. Now, my goal for this is I'd like you to enjoy this. I'd like you to have a little bit of fun with this. And to help with that, I'm going to give you a lot of leeway on what you do. So the key criteria, that's what I'm sort of putting in place now to give you a little bit of guidance, but you really can go a lot of ways with this. Let's go over the key criteria. I was trying to think of a good way, a good sort of direction or prompt to give you on the writing of this paper. And so this is what I came up with. I want you to write this from the standpoint that you have created a brand and you're going to be launching that brand. And so you're going to present this to an investor or a group of investors that you would like to invest in your brand. So your brand hasn't really quite come to life yet, but let's say you are in production and let's say your brand was going to be a new pen. Let's say you're in the process of creating that new brand, that new pen brand right now, and you are going to launch it next year. So you're looking for investors right now to give you money so you can do a bigger launch. So the second criteria that I said was make an assumption you are going to launch this as a national product or a national service. So I don't want you creating a brand of a pizza shop that is in Burbank. If you want to create a pizza shop, I want you to create a pizza chain, a pizza brand, something to compete with Domino's or Papa John's. I want you to create something of size. Key criteria number 3 goes right after key criteria number 2 that I just said. I don't want you to be concerned one bit about budget or one bit about time. Pretend you either have a lot of money or you're going to get a lot of money. So don't be worried about, could I really do this? Assume you're going to have the backing you need to do it. Assume if you're going to create a national brand, if you're going to create a pizza chain, well, you might not put 3,000 stores up in a week, but let's say you could do 500 in your first year. That's a real national brand. But don't get hung up on budget. You don't have to worry one bit about media buys or about what the cost of creating a commercial is. I'll even go so far as to say, if you want to have a spokesperson, hire whoever you want. Assume you have the budget to get the spokesperson you want. What I'm going to be looking at and what I'm really going to be judging you on is the strength of the brand, the work that you do on this brand. So the caution that I'll say with things like a spokesperson is, just because somebody is big and popular does not mean that they will necessarily be a good spokesperson. I want that spokesperson to be good for the brand. So if you were to, let me just see if I can think up one real quick. If you were to be creating a, okay, I don't know, maybe I won't do this well, but a skincare product, right? A new skin cream that's going to reduce wrinkles. I'm going to suggest to you that somebody like Dennis Rodman, with all of his piercings and tattoos, many of which have faded because he's older, he might not be the best person to be a spokesperson for skin cream, right? So that's what I mean. I want you to think through who's your spokesperson and are they appropriate to the brand. Criteria number 4, you don't have to be concerned at all about making the product or creating the service unless it has something to do with the branding. So if, for example, you were to say to me, you wanted to create a brand of smartphone that was made entirely in the US, that would tell me where it's made is important to the brand, because no smartphones are made entirely in the US. Most are made in Asia. And so if that's an important part of your branding, then it's okay. But I don't want you to worry about, oh, we can't make that product here because we don't have the raw materials for it. just assume you can get the raw materials. I want you guys to create that brand. Now, when I'm saying create a brand, I want you to create the brand that wraps around products and services. So for this project, when you create the brand, there has to be at least one product or at least one service. Meaning, if you want to create a new smartphone brand, you're going to create a brand. If Angel was going to do it, he might create Angel phones, and he's going to need at least one, which would be, you know, the Angel, the iPhone 12, right, to compete with the iPhone 12. So for your project, you need to have at least one product. Part of that is I want to see how that brand, if you build a brand properly, you would be able to come out with more products underneath that brand. The same way Apple does. You have lots of products under the Apple brand, so you're going to create that brand and at least one product, but it doesn't have to be a product. You guys can create a service if you want. You can create a bank. You can create pizza. You can create a department store. You can create a service. You can create a rival to Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Have fun with it. This is a time to kind of go nuts and be creative in your thinking of business to create a brand. Okay, so here's some of the things that should be included in your project. You're going to write this in a paper. So you're going to turn in a paper. The paper needs to explain your brand in detail. What the brand is, why the brand is. We're going to talk more about that next week. The brand story. We're going to talk about that next week. And how this brand is going to come to life. I want you to create a brand name, a brand logo, a brand power line or slogan, brand colors, and other brand identity elements. Now, you don't necessarily have to do all the elements listed in the book, but I'd at least like you to do some. I don't want you to just say, oh, my brand is called Angel A-Phones, and the color is blue, and the logo is a phone. I need you to put some effort into it, and I will grade you accordingly on that. But you might not want a spokesperson. That's absolutely okay. You don't have to do that. But I want you to put some thought into it and to really create this brand from scratch. Part of this does need to be you're going to choose the product or the service that will be a part of this. I actually want you to go so far as to show me what that product is going to look like. So I know this is not a class in Photoshop or photography or video or illustration, but I would like you to create some kind of a mock-up of the product. Now, if you were to do a pizza place, you might do a mock-up of the pizza box or the sign in front of the pizza place. If you were doing a new kind of basketball shoe, I'd want to see what that shoe looks like. Now, some of you will say, but I'm not very good at doing that stuff. Okay, maybe you're not. I want you to give it a try, but here's what I'm going to let you do. I don't really care if you do the artwork. If you have a friend who's very good at it, have your friend do it. Guess what? Most entrepreneurs don't do their own Photoshop. They have people do that for them. I want you to come up with the ideas. And if you need a little bit of help on photography or layout or Photoshop, fine, have a friend do it, have a roommate do it. That's absolutely okay. But I want you to bring this brand to life. I want to see the logo. I want to see the colors. I want to see how it looks on a product. You're also going to put together a promotional plan. If you are going to roll this product out nationally, what are some of the forms of integrated marketing communications you should use? And some examples that I suggested are, I would like at least 2 advertisements for this. They should be different types of ads. One might be a magazine ad. Now, I know you guys think magazines are old school, but I'll tell you, for things like projects, a magazine ad is a great way to show your brand. It's a great way to present it. A little teeny internet banner is not a good way to show your brand. It's very hard to see your brand. But on a full page ad this big, you can mock up an ad that will show us how that brand looks. You could also write a storyboard for a commercial for it if you want. Um, and then I'd like to see some of those other supporting elements. Maybe there's signs that would be on retail establishments. You do not need to build a website. You don't have to show me much of a website, but one of the things that I think might be good is to show me just what would the homepage of a website look like. You can just mock one up. You can do that in Microsoft Word. You can do that in PowerPoint. You don't have to be a designer to do that. But again, if you know somebody who is very good at that, give them the ideas and let them bring it to life. I'm not going to grade you on the art. I'm going to grade you on the presentation of your ideas. Are the ideas good? Are they sound? And can I tell that from what you turn in the paper? Now, this is now going to be due on the 19th. That is our last night of class, and that's when we're also going to do a review for the final exam. I originally was going to have you guys presenting this in class. If we present in class, that will not give us enough time, I think, to do our final exam review. So, as of this moment, you're not going to do a presentation. You're just going to do the paper. I don't want you stressing over presenting this in class. Okay? So you're going to turn this in as a paper. You're going to turn it in online. But even though I know I said and I had on the syllabus presentations, we're not going to do those because I think we're going to max out our class time on working on these. And then that last class session we have will actually be a review before Thanksgiving. Remember, we have in fall semester here at Woodbury, we have this really weird end of the semester thing where our last class is before Thanksgiving, then Thanksgiving hits, then the studio finals hit, then our finals hit. So there's a big gap of time. And so I don't want you guys being sort of messed up. I want you to have a really good review on that last night of class. And of course, we will record it. And then we'll have the final when the final is scheduled. And again, the final will be very similar in terms of I will give you a window in which to do it. We'll talk much more about the final later. But you're not going to present this other than turning in the paper. Don't worry about doing a PowerPoint. Don't worry about, recording an interview or a presentation, which is one of the ideas that I thought we might do. We're not going to do that. Just turn in the paper. So that is a look at the brand creation project. I'd like you to have fun with this. I'd like you to create some interesting brands, some interesting products and services. Try to do a product or a service that is not being used right now, something that's kind of new and different. And with that, I'm going to simply ask, does anybody have any initial questions about the project?
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's no works cited for our papers because it's all our ideas, right? Because it's our brand and all of that, right?
Well, the works cited might be, when you're creating a brand, you're probably going to look at competitive products. You're going to look at marketplace and demographics and target audiences. So,
Okay.
so you might have those. But to your point, this is coming out of your head.
Yeah.
You're creating this is kind of like Shark Tank. You're coming up with the product
Okay.
that I'm going to look at and go, wow, that's a really great idea. I want to write you $1 million check to support that. But also remember, in my class, I know I said this early in the semester, I'll just say it again. I'm not super big on citations anyway.
Yeah,
I don't really care if it's a footnote, an endnote, a bibliography, a works cited. All I really want to know is if you get information from somewhere, you tell me where you got them. I'm not really hung up on what style or what format. And if it's your idea, I want to know when it's your idea.
Okay.
That's it. So don't stress out. I really think your effort on this should be creating the brand and thinking it through and brainstorming and having some fun with that.
Okay, and then the other question was kind of a big one for the logo. Obviously, like if you don't have Photoshop or anything, do you want us to draw it? Do you want us to get like an app that we can draw it on and show you, or like what? Like how do you want us to drop it in the paper?
Great question. Any or all of the above.
Okay.
You can draw it if you're good at drawing. So I'll give you my real quick story on that. I'm horrible at drawing. I learned very on in college that when I was working in my advertising program, and then when I got my MBA and I had a lot of marketing classes, I had to rely on friends who were good at drawing because we didn't really have Photoshop back then. So you can draw it. You can mock it up yourself online. I actually think it's it's much easier to do on a computer these days than it was. I've actually created logos in Microsoft Word and on PowerPoint.
Yeah.
If you want to invest a little teeny bit of money, I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you that if you go on Fiverr, you can do a logo for $6.
Okay. What's the website again?
Fiverr, F-I-V, I think it's Fiverr. If you do a Google search just for Fiverr, add an R at the end, but I think there's two.
Yeah.
And literally Fiverr, now your prices can go way up. They can add on many things, but things start at $5. I have had voiceovers for radio commercials that I've paid $5 for, and then they just add a $1 service fee on top of it. I had a
Yeah.
client of mine, so we design logos, right? But the logos from my company start at $2,500. And I had a client of mine very sheepishly over a Zoom lunch that we had. He said, "Don't kill me for this, but I did a logo on Fiverr." I said, "Why the heck did you do that?" And he goes, "We were really just checking to see if it was even going to work before we brought it to you." And he said, "We'll still pay you and we still want you to work on it, but I want to show you what they came up with." People on Fiverr are in like every country in the world. So you might have a Russian working on it, or somebody from Bangladesh, or somebody from Brazil. But sometimes you'll get amazing stuff. There are many other logo websites, but what you typically do, like on Fiverr, and I'm not trying to push you to Fiverr, but just know that if you were to do that, you basically give them the name and then you give them a few ideas. I want it to be blue and red. I want it to be basically a square or basically a circle, or I want it to have, you know, coming out of the exhaust of a car or something, or I want it to be to
Yeah.
show a jet airplane. Then they do it that way. So it's an easy way if you need to. And let me also do this. If you have any questions on other ideas on how you want to do it, feel free to ask me over the next couple weeks. I'm
Okay.
happy to help. I'm happy to help. And I'm also saying I'm going to give you a lot of leeway, because what I really want is your thinking. I'm going to keep saying that. This is not about being a great artist. This is about being really creative in your thinking about a brand.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I might send you an email.
Okay. Okay. That's absolutely okay. Anybody have any other questions about the project? There's going to be more coming up over the few weeks, but we'll do as many as we can now. Angel, you had a question?
Yeah. So I see on Moodle you have brand project, and then you also have brand project, choosing your and creating your brand. So does that mean the choosing and creating a brand, you want us to do that before we actually start, actually going into details and stuff? But
You know,
that's due next week.
let me just go. Okay, so Angel just skipped ahead. What I should have written on the one for this week is where it says brand project, that should have said brand project homework.
Oh, okay.
That should have said brand project homework. So that's your first homework assignment to help. And also know this, when you look at the brand project, on the syllabus, it's 100 points. On the brand project, you'll see it's 80 points. Because 2 weeks from now, I am going to have you check in with me and I'll give you 10 points. And I'll have you check in the week before with a more finished version and I'll give you 10 more points. So 20 points are available just for not waiting till the last week to do it. But all combined, that'll be 100 points for the project. And so I will actually fix this. Here, you know what? I'm going to do this right now. Watch this. I'm going to do this on the fly. Famous last words. Okay, if you refresh, it now should say for this week, brand project homework.
Yeah, it does now.
So I fixed that. So thanks for catching me on that. I originally had the first check-in going to be next week, and I decided just to make it a simple homework to help you go through the thinking. So let's go into that. let's do the homework. And then, but still, if we have other questions about it. So all I really want you to do for this week is spend some time thinking about, I actually would start by thinking about kind of the product or the service you'd like to make. That I find that easier. And then create a brand around that. Instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to create a brand that's going to be called Safari X. Now let me come up with a product. It usually works the other way. So you might just think of a product or a service that you'd like to do. And you don't have to think it all the way through. And then you're going to create a brand around that and make sure that we understand what that product or service is. And then just a very sort of simple outline. You might say, so Safari X is going to be a new retail store that is tied in with, I don't know, eBay. And we're going to put these stores all around the country, and we're going to find the coolest things on eBay, and we're going to put them in these stores. I don't know. It's a stupid idea, but let's just say we come up with that. I just want, when I say an outline, you might write a few sentences or 5 or 10 bullet points. But think of this almost, if you look at number 5 on the homework, brainstorming ideas of what this brand could be. So I want kind of an outline of what the brand is, what the brand elements are, but I'm thinking of this homework as an excuse for you to brainstorm. And here's the great thing about it. I want you to come up with a name, come up with a product, but if you decide to change it a week later, that's okay. This is just an excuse for you to start the brainstorming on this. And again, I want you to have fun with this. I want you to be creative in your thinking on it. So this is like a page or two of just, forgive me for this language, but this is what we call it here at our office. We call this a brain dump. And it's where you just try to get ideas out of your head onto a whiteboard or a piece of paper. Hey, wouldn't this be cool if we did this? What if we did a MacBook Pro speaker system that would tie into your phone and your MacBook Pro, and it would be wireless and it would be a part of your sunglasses? Okay, that's cool. And maybe that starts to be too complex. So maybe you just, do wireless speakers in sunglasses, which, by the way, I had a friend give me a pair. I don't know why he gave these to me out of the blue. He gave me a pair of Bose sports sunglasses, because he and I go bike riding together, and they're Bose sports sunglasses with speakers built into them. Bluetooth. Oh my gosh, these are the coolest things in the world. They are so nice. But don't worry about your idea being perfect in a week. Just come up with ideas. And if you change it a week later, that's absolutely okay. But I just want you to go through this process of kind of thinking up a product and a brand, and what would the brand elements be? And is it important to have a spokesperson? Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, maybe you come up with 3 ideas for spokespeople. Now, I also put down on this week, let me just back up so I make sure that I did put this up on Moodle. Yeah, I put up a link to a TED Talk. And the TED Talk is called What's Your Brand Story? It's about a 15-minute video. I'd like you guys to watch that this week. I was originally going to have the homework based on that, and I realized just sort of doing the outline and thinking of your brand would be better. But I want you to watch that, because it's a great discussion on the why of a brand. And when you're creating a brand, what the guy who does this says is, it's less important what brand you come up with. It's more important why you come up with it. It's a great little video. And we'll talk about that next week. But I think that would be just a good one to watch this week and get those creative juices flowing. Yeah, so that's the homework. And you don't have any homework related to that TED Talk, but I think it would be very beneficial to watch. So you now have a project that's due in 4 weeks. You have homework that is due next week. We're not going to do any lecture tonight. I will catch up with the other stuff over the next couple weeks, the chapters 9 through 15. But I'm going to do them just like we did the first 8. We're going to sort of hit on the high points that I think are important, that you'll likely be tested on, and we'll blow past the stuff that I don't think is important in the textbook. Any other questions so far on the project? Yeah, go ahead.
Number 5, when it says like ideas for the brand, like why, and a brand story, like a brand story, like for example, if we're doing a makeup line per se, and like there's gonna be like an maybe like a brand extension or something like to a skincare line because like those go hand in hand, something like that. And would a brand story kind of be like how we came to be, or is that what you were kind of thinking, like
Yeah.
some fluff, like well, who are we, why we decided to do this,
Yeah.
something
So
like that?
I say to all of my clients, whether you have one or not, you need a brand story. And if you don't have a real one, we'll make up a really good one.
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
when you watch that video, that TED Talk, that'll kind of give you some ideas on that. But
Okay.
if you think about, I'm trying to think of, I don't have a good example on the tip of my tongue, but let's say there is let's say there's a celebrity with with a line of skincare products,
Mhm.
and that celebrity, when you see them being interviewed, they say, I found one of the things that was really rough is when I started performing, I had to use a lot of makeup because I was on stage, and I found that it dried out my skin, and sometimes my skin broke out, and sometimes I had rashes. So I needed to find a hypoallergenic brand. So I worked with these chemists, and I came up with a new line that's guaranteed to be hypoallergenic. That's the story right there. It's
Okay.
that it's more of the why we came up with this rather than just what you came up with.
Yeah, that was
And if you don't have a really good why, I'm going to tell you, as a marketing person, you can make up why.
yeah, of course.
You can backfill that story as you need. The story that I always say of Newman Grace, the company that my wife started. She was an art director at a hair care products company, and she began getting migraines. And we went to doctor after doctor after doctor that couldn't figure out what it was, until one of them finally said, "Where do you work?" She said, "I work at a company called Aware Products." And he said, "What kind of products are they?" She said, "Skin or hair care." And he said, "Check and see if the air conditioning of manufacturing is the same as your art department." And it wasn't, but the air conditioning that was used in the laboratory for testing was shared by the art department. And even though you couldn't smell it, the fumes were coming through. So my wife's worked at home for 2 weeks, and the migraines went away. And so she basically went back to the company and said, "I cannot work there." And they said, "Will you work for us as an independent contractor at home?" And she said, "Sure." And when she started doing that, they had products. So they did private label hair care. If you had a salon and you wanted your own hair care product, they made it for you. And she made the labels for it. So then what they said is, "Well, we've got a couple salons we're not supposed to be doing work for, but we kind of do it out the back door. If we run it through you, then it'll be much better." Those were her first freelance accounts. And
Yeah.
so she started doing more and more and more and more. And that became, we incorporated, and that became Newman Grace. And that's a much better story than me just saying, "Yeah, she got a lot of freelance work and we started making some money and she, decided to incorporate." Because whenever I tell anybody that story, they remember it.
Yeah.
And the only time that it's really bad is when they go to my wife and they go, "Do you still have migraines?" And my wife says, "What the heck are you talking about?" Because that was 25 years ago, and she doesn't remember the migraines from back then. So the story will come along. Sometimes you might literally have that story now, and that's okay. But this week is about brainstorming and coming up with ideas. If I were you, I'd just keep a pad of paper, put it next to the bed, put it next to your desk or whatever. And if you come up with a, if you're using a pen, you go, "I think I could make a better pen," then put down, pen idea or makeup idea or hair care or energy drink or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it would be okay to put 5 down and then just boil it down to 1. And I'll just repeat this one more time on this. For the homework, don't worry if what you put down there on the homework isn't what you end up doing 4 weeks from now. This week is an excuse to get thinking. That's why I didn't want to have a lecture this week. I just want you to have some fun with coming up with ideas for the brand. Any other questions? Okay, so we only went just over an hour, so I think I kind of held to my word. We didn't go to 9 o'clock. I think I held you guys up just long enough, so if you do want to watch presidential debate, you're going to have to go back and watch it on YouTube. And so I'll stay on here for a couple minutes, but we're dismissed for tonight. I'm going to stop recording. I will post the recording probably tomorrow when they send me the email that says it's done. And please send me any questions that you have on the project or on the homework. And with that, I will see you guys next week. Take care. Anybody have any more questions for me?
Yeah, Dr. Brian, I have a question. Did you I mean, like, you have not graded my Facebook?
I have not recorded the grades that you emailed me.
Oh,
Those should be up probably tomorrow, or I was about to say tomorrow or Friday. Tomorrow is Friday. Tomorrow or Saturday, I think you'll see those up there.
all right, yeah, perfect. Just like a friendly reminder, it's also about the Facebook page. I submitted my articles and my comments. I think, yeah, the same day of the midterm, like after the midterm. My bad.
I remember
Same day.
seeing them. Yeah. I actually haven't even looked at them, but I remember seeing them come in. So, yeah, I'll get to those.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, sounds good.
Have a good day.
Yeah, how are you doing otherwise? Good?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm doing great.
Good.
A lot of other classes, a lot of work.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up.
Well, I think you kind of caught up on this one, right? You got all that stuff in?
Yeah,
So,
I did. I submitted everything.
Good. So have a little fun with creating a brand.
Sure, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. I'll talk to you next week. All right, bye.